A woman lies on a four-poster bed, her spine painted like a fractured Greek column. Her face remains serene as steel nails pierce her bare skin. It is not a nightmare. It is a canvas. It is 1944, and Frida Kahlo has just finished The Broken Column, a painting that would show the world something no one had ever seen before. Physical pain transformed into brutal beauty. While the art world celebrated perfect bodies and idyllic landscapes, this Mexican woman was doing something unthinkable. She was painting her scars. She was painting her internal organs. She was painting the exact moment her body shattered. And the world didn't know whether to look or look away. Mexico City, September 17, 1925. An ordinary afternoon that would become the defining moment of her entire life. Frida Kahlo is 18 years old. She is a brilliant student, one of the few women at the National Preparatory School. She wears a traditional Tehuana dress that already sets her apart from the crowd. She boards a wooden bus with her boyfriend, Alejandro Gomez Arias. The vehicle moves slowly along the cobblestone streets of Coyoacán. It's 5:30 in the afternoon. The sky has that peculiar orange hue of the Valley of Mexico at sunset. The yellow tram appears from around a corner. The bus driver doesn't see it in time. The screech of metal against metal. The collective scream of the passengers. And then, the impact. The bus's steel handrail pierces Frida's pelvis like a spear. Her spine is fractured in 3 places. 11 fractures in her right leg. Her right foot shattered. 3 broken ribs. A fractured collarbone. A dislocated shoulder. But there's more. A passenger was carrying a package of gold dust, probably paint pigment. The impact scattered it through the air. When the first responders arrived, they found Frida covered in blood and gold, like a sacred sculpture shattered on an altar. Red Cross Hospital. The doctors shake his head. The chances of survival are minimal. Even if he survives, he will never walk. He will never have children. He will never live without pain. For a month, Frida remained encased in a plaster cast that covered her entire torso. She couldn't move. She could barely breathe. The white walls of the hospital became her only view. But her mind traveled to places no one else could see. It is here, in this hospital bed, that the true transformation begins. Not of physical recovery, but of artistic vision. Her mother, Matilda Calderon, had an idea. She installed a mirror on the ceiling above Frida's bed. She also brought her paints, brushes, and a special easel that she could use while lying down. Frida looks up. Her own face stares back at her from the ceiling. But it is not the face of a victim. It is the face of someone discovering a secret the art world has ignored for centuries. A broken body can be beautiful. Pain can be art. She begins to paint. Her first serious self-portrait is born in that bed. She doesn't paint herself smiling. She doesn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. She doesn't embellish the lines of suffering around her mouth. She paints what she sees, a broken woman who refuses to disappear. While Frida paints in her bed, the art world is dominated by men who paint women as objects of beauty. Reclining Venuses, nude muses in impossible poses, perfect, smooth, unmarked, historyless female bodies. But Frida is asking a different question. What if beauty isn't in perfection? What if it's in truth? What if the wounded body, the bleeding body, the suffering body, is more beautiful precisely because it's real? No one in 1925 was prepared for this question. But in the next 20 years, Frida would answer it again and again, with every brushstroke, with every impossible self-portrait. A year after the accident, Frida was finally able to stand. In pain, with orthopedic corsets hidden beneath her colorful dresses. But standing at last. Look at her collection of self-portraits. 13 paintings featuring her face, each more honest than the last. She knows they're different. She knows they're powerful. But she doesn't know that these canvases will forever change the way the world understands art, pain, and feminine beauty. She doesn't know that she is creating a new visual language that, decades later, will inspire global feminist movements. All she knows is this: she has survived. And now, she's going to paint everything that society tells her she must hide. The question is the world ready to see it? 1928. Frida is 21 years old and has made a radical decision. She wants to be a professional painter, not a Sunday painter, not an amateur artist. She wants her work to be taken seriously. But there's a problem. In Mexico, there's only one artist whose opinion truly matters: Diego Rivera. the country's most famous muralist. A 42-year-old man, weighing 200 pounds, with an ego the size of the murals he paints on government buildings. Frida takes her 3 best paintings under her arm and shows up unannounced at the Ministry of Education, where Diego is working on scaffolding 10 meters high. "Diego, come down. I need you to see my work," Frida shouts from below. Diego comes downstairs in a bad mood. He's used to admirers who crave easy praise. But when he looks at Frida's paintings, something changes in his expression. They're self-portraits, but not like traditional self-portraits. In one of them, Frida has painted herself with piercing eyes that seem to pierce the canvas. In another, she appears with her orthopedic corset visible beneath a half-open dress. There is no coquetry. There is none of the typical soft femininity of the paintings of the period. "You have talent," says Diego. It's the first time he's taken the work of a female artist seriously. August 21st, 1929. Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera get married. Newspapers call the couple the elephant and the dove because of the difference in size and age. But this is no conventional marriage. Diego is an avowed communist, a compulsive womanizer, and a militant atheist. Frida is equally rebellious, openly bisexual, a tequila drinker, a cigar smoker, and increasingly radical in her politics. Together they create something new, an artistic marriage where they both work, where they both have lovers, where they both defy every social rule of their time. It was during this period that Frida began to cultivate her most famous public image. She definitively adopted traditional Tehuana attire, long, brightly colored skirts, embroidered blouses, and a rebozo draped over her shoulders. She braided her black hair with flowers and ribbons. But this isn't mere folklore. It's a political statement. In a Mexico desperately trying to imitate Europe and the United States, Frida is saying, "Indigenous culture is beautiful. Mexican culture is enough. We don't need to look like Paris or New York." Even more, she's using her body as a canvas. Every dress hides her orthopedic corsets. Every long skirt conceals her thinnest leg. Every jade necklace distracts from the scars on her neck. She is creating a new form of beauty, beauty as resistance. 1930. Diego receives an important commission in San Francisco. The couple moves to the United States. For Frida, it's like arriving on another planet. American women wear short dresses, have wavy blonde hair, and use pastel makeup. The dominant aesthetic is all softness, delicacy, and domesticated femininity. Frida arrives with her floor-length skirt, her hair in a braided bun, her unplucked unibrow, her mustache unconcealed. The journalists don't know how to classify her. Is she primitive? Is she exotic? Is she beautiful? In photographs from that era, Frida almost never smiles. This is a conscious decision. In 1931, the expectation for women was to be agreeable, compliant, and decorative. Frida refuses. In her photographic portraits, she looks directly at the camera with a serious, almost defiant expression. She doesn't tilt her head. She doesn't make herself small. She occupies space. And in his paintings, he goes even further. He begins creating self-portraits where he appears with traditionally masculine attributes. In Self-Portrait with Short Hair, he later paints himself in men's clothing. In others, he includes phallic symbols, references to his infertility, and images of his open body revealing his internal organs. She is redefining what it means to be a woman in art. And she is doing it alone, without an artistic movement to support her. Detroit, July 1932. Frida is pregnant. It's her 3rd pregnancy. The previous 2 ended in miscarriages due to the damage caused by the accident. This time, she's determined to see it through to term. But her fractured pelvis makes a healthy pregnancy impossible. On July 4th, she starts bleeding. She's rushed to Henry Ford Hospital. She loses the baby. A boy, Diego Jr., she was going to name him. What Frida does next is something no artist has done before. She paints abortion. Not metaphorically, literally. In Henry Ford Hospital, she is depicted lying naked and bleeding in a hospital bed. From her body emerge 6 floating objects connected by red veins. A male fetus, a snail, symbol of the womb, a withered orchid, an anatomical model of the pelvis, a machine, Detroit, the industrial city, and a female torso. It is 1932. No woman has ever painted her abortion. No artist has ever shown menstrual blood, reproductive trauma. the inside of the female body with such brutal honesty. The painting is considered obscene by many. Too graphic, too personal, too feminine. But Frida has crossed a line of no return. She has decided that everything the world tells her to hide, she will paint. Back in Mexico in 1933, Frida looks at her new paintings. They are unlike anything else being produced in the art world. They are not surrealist, although André Breton will later try to claim her for that movement. They are not folkloric, although they use Mexican symbolism. They are something new. They are a visual autobiography. They are pain transformed into aesthetics. They are the interior of the female body presented without shame. But a question begins to form. Can extreme pain be transformed into beauty? Or is Frida simply documenting her endless suffering? The answer will come in the darkest years. Years where physical pain will multiply, where emotional pain will become unbearable, and where she will paint her most disturbing masterpieces. 1934. Frida discovers that Diego is having an affair. This is not new. Diego has had dozens of lovers during their marriage. Frida has accepted it, even having had affairs of her own. But this time it's different. The mistress is Cristina, Frida's younger sister. The pain isn't just emotional. It's physical. Frida feels as if the bus accident is happening again, but this time in her chest. She begins to paint compulsively. From this betrayal was born one of the most disturbing paintings of the 20th century, A Few Small Nips. The scene depicts a real femicide reported in the newspapers. A man has stabbed his partner to death. At the trial, he defends himself by saying, "I only gave her a few little pricks." Frida paints the woman's body on a bed, covered in blood. The murderer stands beside her, holding the knife. But what is most striking is that Frida paints blood splattering outside the frame of the painting, staining the physical wooden frame. It's not just a painting about male violence. It's a painting about how women's pain overflows, contaminates everything, and cannot be contained within the limits imposed by society. During the 1930s, Frida's body became her obsessive subject, but not the idealized body of Western art. The real body, the body that hurts, the body that bleeds, the body that fails. In 1938, she painted What the Water Gave Me. It is a self-portrait of her body seen from above, in a bathtub. But floating in the water are images from her life. The Empire State Building, her parents, a volcano, a Tehuana dress, a drowning woman. Her body is a map, an emotional landscape where everything she has lived through is inscribed. During this period, Frida intentionally exaggerated her unibrow and mustache in her self-portraits. She didn't just not hide them, she emphasized them. This is revolutionary. In the 1930s, the beauty industry was booming in the United States and Europe. Depilatory creams, tweezers, and treatments to correct any unwanted facial hair were being sold. Frida does the opposite. In Self-Portrait dedicated to Leon Trotsky, her unibrow is a thick, dark line. Her mustache is visible. Her gaze is direct, unapologetic. She's saying something radical. The unmodified female body is enough. It's beautiful. It doesn't need correction. 1938. André Breton, the Pope of Surrealism, visits Mexico. He sees Frida's work and is fascinated. He declares her a surrealist. He offers her an exhibition in Paris. But Frida rejects the label. "I don't paint dreams," she says. "I paint my own reality." This distinction is crucial. The surrealists painted the unconscious, the dreamlike, the fantastic. Frida paints her literal life. The broken spine on her back is not a metaphor. The tears are not a poetic symbol. They are documentation. When Frida arrived in Paris for her exhibition in 1939, she expected artistic recognition. Instead, she found fetishization. European artists see her as exotic, as primitive, as a representative of a magical and wild Mexico. They don't see her technique. They don't see her conceptual innovation. They see a picturesque indigenous woman. Frida detests the experience. "I'd rather sit on the floor of the Toluca market," she writes in a letter, "than with this gang of lunatic sons of bitches in Paris." The exhibition is small but significant. The Louvre buys one of his self-portraits. It is the first work by a 20th-century Mexican artist acquired by that museum. Back in Mexico in 1939, Frida and Diego divorced. The pain was devastating. Frida painted her response, the two Fridas. Two versions of herself sit side by side, holding hands. One wears a traditional Tehuana dress. The other wears a white European Victorian dress. Their hearts are exposed, connected by an artery. The European Frida holds surgical forceps, trying to stop the bleeding from her heart. It is a painting about fractured identity, about the two women who inhabit her body, the Mexican and the European, the beloved and the abandoned, the strong and the one who bleeds. But it is also a painting about something deeper, the impossibility of separating physical pain from emotional pain. In Frida's body, everything is one. During these years, Frida was unknowingly creating a completely new visual vocabulary, a language for talking about the female body that didn't exist before. She's painting abortions, infertility, betrayal, domestic violence, chronic pain. And she's doing it without romanticizing it, without making suffering beautiful in the traditional way. Suffering is simply shown in all its rawness. Decades later, this language would be adopted by feminist artists who would finally have visual words to talk about experiences that had always been silenced. 1940. Frida and Diego remarry. It's a different marriage, with different rules. Separate beds, mutual sexual freedom, professional respect. But something else is happening to Frida's body. The pain is getting worse. The 35 operations she will eventually endure are beginning. Her spine is deteriorating. The doctors tell him he needs to spend more time in bed, that he needs to limit his movement, that his body is failing. But Frida had other plans. In the coming years, she would paint her most intense works. Works where the body is not only a subject, but becomes a battleground. Can art keep her alive when her body is giving out? The answer lies in the canvases she has yet to paint. Coyoacán, Mexico City, 1941. The blue house has become the center of Frida's universe. This 19th-century colonial house, painted a deep cobalt blue, is where she was born and where she will eventually die. The walls are covered in Mexican folk art, cardboard Judas figures, sugar skulls, and religious altarpieces. The garden is a jungle of tropical plants, cacti, and bougainvillea. There are spider monkeys as pets. A hairless Zoloet squintle dog named Senor Zolotl. Parrots fly freely between the rooms. It's not just a house. It's a living art installation, a declaration of Mexican identity in every corner. Frida's studio in the blue house is on the second floor. Natural light streams in through large windows. Her special easel allows her to paint lying down or sitting up, depending on how much pain she's feeling that day. The walls are covered with photographs, her parents, Diego, herself at different ages. There are reproductions of paintings she admires. There are mirrors everywhere, a reminder of that first mirror on the hospital ceiling. In one corner, there are jars containing medical specimens, a fetus preserved in formaldehyde, a human skeleton she uses for anatomical reference. These are objects most people would find morbid. For Frida, they are tools. They are reminders of the thin line between life and death. In 1944, Frida began writing a diary. But it wasn't an ordinary diary. Every page was an explosion of color, text, and drawing. Write about Diego, Diego beginning, Diego builder, Diego my child, Diego my boyfriend, Diego painter, Diego my lover, Diego my husband, Diego my friend, Diego my mother, Diego my father, Diego my son, Diego me, Diego universe. But she also writes about pain. She draws her fractured spine. She paints watercolor stains that look like blood. She writes disjointed words. Feet. What do I need them for if I have wings to fly? The diary is raw, unfiltered. It's where Frida is most honest. And where it's clear, she's using art as a form of survival. 1944. The back pain is unbearable. The doctors put her in a new steel corset. Frida hates it. She feels like a prisoner in her own body. He painted The Broken Column. It is one of his most famous and most brutal self-portraits. He is depicted standing in a barren, cracked landscape. His torso is open, revealing an ancient ionic column in place of his spine. The column is fractured in several places. His skin is pierced by steel nails. Tears stream down his cheeks. But his gaze is unwavering, unyielding. A metal corset keeps her upright. It's both literal and metaphorical. The medical corset she must wear and the inner strength she needs to avoid collapsing. During these years, something extraordinary happens in Frida's work. As her body deteriorates, her paintings become more powerful, more direct, more challenging. In The Wounded Deer, He is depicted as a deer with its face pierced by 9 arrows. The deer tries to flee but is trapped in the forest. It is a perfect representation of his situation, wounded, cornered by pain, but still alive, still moving. There is no self-pity in these paintings. There is documentation. There is brutal honesty. There is a strange beauty in showing the unadorned truth. Despite the constant pain, the blue house is full of life. Frida has numerous lovers during this time, men and women. She doesn't hide them. She feels no shame. She had a particularly intense relationship with the American painter Jacqueline Lamba. Passionate letters traveled between Paris and Mexico. Frida painted portraits dedicated to her lovers, both male and female. In an era where bisexuality is considered a mental illness, where homosexuality is criminalized in most countries, Frida lives her sexuality openly. It's part of her redefinition of femininity. Women can desire. Women can have multiple lovers. Women can love other women. Frida becomes more politically active. She is a member of the Mexican Communist Party. She attends marches. She signs manifestos. Her house becomes a refuge for political exiles. In 1939, she had given asylum to Leon Trotsky, the Russian revolutionary exiled by Stalin. She even had a brief affair with him, which caused an international scandal. Her art is also politicized. In Marxism Will Give Health to the Sick, she depicts herself being freed from her crutches thanks to Marx's giant hands. It is politically naive but emotionally honest. She is searching for any ideology that promises to liberate her from pain. 1943. Frida is offered her first solo exhibition in Mexico at the Galeria de Arte Mexicano. She has been painting for 18 years. It is her first major recognition in her own country. The exhibition is a success. Critics are finally taking her work seriously, not as a curiosity, not as Diego Rivera's wife, but as an artist with her own voice. She sells some paintings. She doesn't get rich, she never will, but she achieves something more important: artistic legitimacy. At the end of this period, Frida had created something unique in the history of art, a complete visual archive of a life of female pain. She has painted her abortions, her surgeries, her corsets, her tears, her betrayals, her loneliness, her desire, her rage. She has documented the interior of a female body with more honesty than any artist before her. And she has done so by creating a new aesthetic, a beauty that doesn't depend on perfection but on truth. A beauty that says, "This is me, broken and whole at the same time." But the body has limits. And Frida's limits are approaching faster than she wants to admit. In 1950, her right leg began to develop gangrene. Doctors spoke of amputation, and Frida painted some of her darkest works. Can art survive when the body can no longer? The answer will be both painful and beautiful. The pain is no longer intermittent. It's constant. Frida spends entire days in bed, unable to get up. Her right leg is losing sensation. Blood circulation is failing. The doctors proposed a solution: 7 spinal surgeries during 1950. Spinal fusions. Bone grafts. Each surgery promised relief. Each one brought more pain. Frida agrees. What choice does she have? But something is changing in her. In her letters she writes, "I'm tired of so much surgery." During her hospitalizations in 1950, Frida painted Self-Portrait with the portrait of Dr. Farrell. It is different from her other self-portraits. She is depicted sitting in a wheelchair, holding a blood-stained, heart-shaped paddle. Behind her is a portrait of her surgeon. But what is most striking is her expression. There are no tears. There is determination. The painting says, "I'm still here. I'm still painting. Pain hasn't defeated me." But the truth is more complicated. In her diary she writes, "Feet. What do I need them for, if I have wings to fly?" 1953. The infection in his right leg has become critical. The antibiotics aren't working. The gangrene is spreading. The doctors are clear: amputation or death. Frida struggled with the decision for weeks. Her right leg, already thinner than her left because of the 1925 accident, had been part of her identity. Her long skirts had hidden it, but it was hers. In August, there are no more options. They amputate his leg below the knee. In her diary, Frida draws her amputated leg. She draws it wearing boots. She draws it flying. She draws it transforming into a tree root. He writes, "Why do I need feet if I have wings to fly?" But he also writes, I joyfully await my departure and hope never to return. For the first time in her life, Frida is seriously contemplating suicide. The physical pain has crossed a line, and the emotional pain of losing part of her body is devastating. Frida orders a prosthetic leg, but she doesn't accept the one the doctors offer her, functional, flesh-colored, and discreet. Instead, she commissions a red leather boot embroidered with golden Chinese dragons. It's outrageous. It's beautiful. It's impossible to ignore. She's doing with her prosthetic leg what she did with her unibrow, her corsets, her entire body, turning it into an artistic statement. If she's going to have a fake leg, it should be spectacular. April 1953. Lola Alvarez Bravo organizes a solo exhibition of Frida Kahlo's work at her gallery in Mexico City. The doctors have forbidden him from attending. He is too weak. He must remain in bed. Frida ignores medical orders. If she can't go to the exhibition will come to her. She orders her 4-poster bed to be transported to the gallery. It arrives by ambulance. They place her in the bed in the middle of the room, surrounded by her paintings. During the opening, Frida receives guests while lying down. She drinks cognac. She smokes cigars. She sings revolutionary songs. It is a final artistic performance. It is her way of saying, I am still here. I am still Frida. During 1954, Frida became addicted to painkillers. Demerol, morphine, anything to quell the constant fire in her body. His writing becomes less coherent. His latest paintings have a different quality, darker, more abstract. Some are unfinished. In one of his last paintings, Watermelons, he depicts a still life of open, red, and juicy watermelons. On one of them, he writes, Long live life. It is dated 8 days before his death. It's a painting about duality. The watermelon is sweet, but rots quickly. Life is beautiful, but it ends. It's both celebration and farewell at the same time. July 2nd, 1954. There is a political demonstration in Mexico City against the coup in Guatemala. Diego asks Frida not to go. She is too ill. Frida persists. She puts on her red shawl. She sits in her wheelchair. Diego pushes her through the streets. It is one of the last photographs of Frida alive. In her wheelchair, raising her fist, surrounded by thousands of protesters. Her face shows pain, but also determination. Even in death, she is shouting. Even at the end, she is political. Even in agony, she is visible. July 13th, 1954. Frida dies at the Blue House. The official cause is a pulmonary embolism. Some suspect a deliberate overdose of medication. The truth will never be known for sure. Her last words written in her diary. I joyfully await the exit and hope never to return. But the question remains, did Frida redefine beauty, or did she simply document her pain? The answer lies in what happened next. In the following decades. In how his work was rediscovered. In how he became an icon. And how, 70 years after his death, his face is one of the most recognizable in the world. Not despite his unibrow, but because of it. Not despite his pain, but because he transformed it into art. July 14th, 1954. The Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico City is open for Frida's wake. It is an honor reserved for important national figures. Her coffin is draped with a flag of the Mexican Communist Party. Diego had requested a Mexican flag, but Frida's communist friends insisted. The director of the Palace of Fine Arts nearly lost his job for allowing this political symbol. Thousands of people pass by the coffin, but most aren't there for her paintings. They're there because she was Diego Rivera's wife. Some didn't even know she painted. During the 1950s and 60s, Frida's work almost disappeared from the international art scene. Diego remained famous. Frida was a footnote. The few mentions she receives in art history books describe her as a Mexican folk painter or naive artist. Her work is classified as a regional curiosity, not as serious art. His paintings are scattered. Many are in private collections. Some are in the Blue House, which Diego donated to the Mexican government to be turned into a museum, but which did not officially open until 1958. The 1970s. Something is changing in the United States and Europe. The second-wave feminist movement is questioning everything: art, politics, sexuality, the body. Feminist art historians are beginning to ask uncomfortable questions. Why is art history dominated by men? Where are the women artists? Were they really less talented, or were they systematically ignored? They begin to search, and they find Frida. 1971. An art historian named Hayden Herrera travels to Mexico to research Frida Kahlo. She interviews people who knew her. She reviews archives. She examines paintings that have been in storage for decades. What she discovers is revolutionary. Frida was not a folk painter. She was a conceptual artist, avant la lettre. She had been making autobiographical art, body art, feminist art before those terms even existed. In 1978, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago organized a Frida Kahlo exhibition. It was small, but something happened. Young women gathered in front of her paintings. They cried. They recognized themselves. What makes Frida resonate in the 70s is precisely what made her inappropriate in her time: her brutal honesty about the female body. Feminists see in Henry Ford Hospital what no one had seen before: the first honest representation of an abortion in the history of Western art. They see in The Broken Column what critics had ignored: a representation of chronic female pain that doctors constantly minimize and dismiss. They see in her self-portraits what her era considered ugly: a woman who refuses to be decorative, who does not smile to please, who takes up space without apology. 1983. Hayden Herrera publishes his definitive biography of Frida. It is exhaustive, compassionate, and honest about Frida's sexuality, her pain, and her contradictions. The book becomes a bestseller. Suddenly, Frida is not just an artist. She is a cultural figure. She is a feminist icon. She is a symbol of resistance. Publishing houses begin printing reproductions of his paintings. Museums request loans of his works. The prices of his paintings begin to rise dramatically. The 1990s. Frida's face is everywhere. T-shirts, mugs, posters, stickers. Her unibrow becomes a trademark. Her image is reproduced millions of times. There's something ironic about this. Frida, who had defied commercial beauty standards, is now herself commercialized. Her unconventional image has become conventional through ubiquity. Critics debate: is this celebration or appropriation? Is his legacy being honored or simplified? 1995. Self-Portrait with Monkey and Parrot sells at auction for $3.2 million. It is a record for a Latin American artist. In 2006, Races sold for $5.6 million. In 2016, Dos Desnudos en el Bosque reached $8 million. Finally, in 2021, Diego and I sold for $34.9 million. It is the absolute record for a Latin American artist at auction. Frida, who sold few paintings during her lifetime and was never rich, is now among the most valuable artists in the world. But a complicated question arises: who can use Frida's image? European fashion designers are putting her on runways. It's ironic. Frida, who wore traditional Mexican clothing as a rejection of Western fashion, is now being fetishized by that same industry. Celebrities dress up as Frida Kahlo for Halloween, often badly, with plastic flowers and a unibrow drawn on with a marker. In Mexico, there is outrage. Frida is not a costume. She is not a trend. She is a symbol of Mexican identity, of indigenous resistance, of national pride. The Mexican government tries to protect her image. The Kahlo family registers her name. But it's too late. Frida already belongs to the world. Is this what she would have wanted? It's impossible to know. But one thing is certain: her image has achieved what few works of art ever do. It has escaped the museum. It lives on in popular culture. And therein lies its true power. It didn't just redefine beauty in art. It redefined beauty in the global collective consciousness. Mexico City, 2024. The Blue House receives more than 500,000 visitors a year. It is one of the most visited museums in Mexico. People queue for hours. They come from all over the world: Japanese, Germans, Brazilians, South Africans. They all want to see where Frida lived, loved, suffered, and painted. They walk through the blue rooms. They see her bed. They see her wheelchair. They see her orthopedic corsets decorated with paintings. They see her Tehuana dresses hanging in closets like colorful ghosts. And many weep, because they see someone who suffered but did not give up. Someone who transformed their pain into beauty. Frida's impact on contemporary art is impossible to fully measure. But she's everywhere. Artists like Marina Abramovic, who uses her body as an artistic medium, acknowledge their debt to Frida. Tracy Emin, who creates extremely personal, confessional art, cites Frida as an inspiration. Cindy Sherman's photography, Nan Goldin's self-portraits, Hannah Wilke's art about illness, all have roots in what Frida began. Autobiographical art, body art, art that speaks the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. For generations born after the 2000s, Frida is the default feminist symbol. She appears at women's marches. Her face is on posters at reproductive rights protests. Her unibrow is drawn on banners. She represents multiple things simultaneously. The woman who refuses to be domesticated. The artist who doesn't need male permission. The queer person who lives their sexuality openly. The disabled woman who is not defined by her limitations. It's a flexible icon. Each generation finds what it needs in it. But there are also problems. In media portrayals of Frida, she is frequently whitewashed. Hollywood films portray her with white actresses. Commercial products soften her indigenous features. Reproductions of her paintings frequently lighten her skin tone. There's a tension. The world loves Frida. But does it truly love all of her? Or only the parts that conform to Western beauty standards? Mexican and Chicano activists are fighting against this. They insist Frida was mestiza. She was indigenous. She was Mexican. Her racial identity is not a folkloric accessory. It is central to who she was and what she represented. In 2025, a new generation of artists is carrying Frida's legacy forward. Latina artists are painting their own abortions, their own chronic illnesses, their own complex identities. And when asked about their influences, they mention Frida. Trans and non-binary artists are using the visual vocabulary that Frida created, the self-portrait as a territory for exploring identity, the body as a canvas of truth. Frida did not live to see trans identities normalized, but her work blurring gender lines in her self-portraits, painting herself with both feminine and masculine attributes, resonates deeply with these communities. But there is also a criticism that emerges. Are we romanticizing Frida's suffering? Some critics argue that popular culture has turned her pain into an aesthetic, that we celebrate her suffering instead of mourning that she had to endure so much. There are t-shirts that say "Suffer like Frida." There are memes that use her image to glorify artistic pain, as if pain were a prerequisite for creating. This was not Frida's intention. She didn't paint her pain because she found it romantic. She painted it because it was her reality, because she had no other choice. In medical circles, Frida has become a case study. 35 surgeries during her lifetime. Chronic pain for almost 3 decades. Addiction to medication. Doctors specializing in chronic pain use her case to train new physicians. The lesson: patients' pain, especially women's, is often minimized. Frida had to paint her pain to be believed. Her self-portraits are used in medical conferences. The broken spine appears in presentations on neuropathic pain. Her diary is studied to understand the psychology of chronic pain. Decades after her death, she is contributing to changing how medicine understands and treats female pain. 2025. There are Frida Kahlo exhibitions running simultaneously in London, Tokyo, Sao Paulo, and New York. No other Latin American artist has this level of consistent global presence. His face is instantly recognizable, more recognizable than most 20th century artists, as iconic as Picasso or Van Gogh. But how many people who wear t-shirts with his image have actually seen his paintings? How many understand his work beyond the superficial image? It's the paradox of becoming an icon: maximum visibility, minimum understanding. 71 years after her death, the question remains: did Frida redefine beauty? The answer is complex. For millions of women, yes. They see in their unibrow permission not to shave. They see in their smileless self-portraits the freedom not to please. They see in their paintings of pain the validation of their own suffering. But mainstream beauty still favors what it has always favored: youth, thinness, fair skin, conventional femininity. Perhaps Frida's true contribution wasn't redefining beauty for everyone. It was creating an alternative space, a space where unconventional beauty also matters, where pain doesn't disqualify, where being a woman doesn't mean being perfect. And in that alternative space, millions of people can finally see themselves reflected. It's time to talk about what the commercial image of Frida omits. Because the real person was more complex, more contradictory, and in many ways more interesting than the icon. Frida was no saint. She was deeply human. She could be cruel. She was intensely jealous. Her relationship with Diego was toxic on multiple levels. They both had affairs, but they both suffered because of each other's. She wrote in her diary about wanting Diego to feel the same pain she felt from his infidelities. There was mutual emotional abuse. There was manipulation. Frida identified as a communist, but she lived in a beautiful house. She collected folk art that cost money. Her patrons were often American millionaires. He criticized American imperialism, but he sold his paintings to American collectors. He accepted commissions from capitalists who admired his work. It wasn't simple hypocrisy. It was the complexity of trying to be a radical artist while needing to eat. It was the tension between political ideals and economic survival, something that is often overlooked. Frida consciously constructed her public image. It was not an accident. Frida's choice to constantly wear Tehuana clothing was a form of performance. She didn't grow up wearing those dresses. She adopted them as an adult, influenced by Diego and by the nationalist currents of post-revolutionary Mexico. His unibrow was natural, but he emphasized it in his self-portraits. Sometimes he painted it thicker than it actually was. His mustache was also exaggerated in his paintings. She knew exactly what she was doing, creating a character that was simultaneously herself and an intensified version of herself. There is an uncomfortable question that academics debate. How much of Frida's pain was physical and how much was amplified by drug addiction and psychological problems? There is no doubt that his physical pain was real. The 35 surgeries are documented facts. The fractures from the accident are medically verifiable. But there is also evidence that Frida exaggerated her symptoms to obtain more medication, that her opioid addiction worsened her health instead of improving it, that some doctors operated on her unnecessarily because she insisted. This doesn't invalidate their pain, but it complicates the narrative. Another academic debate: how much of Frida's style was her own innovation and how much was influenced by Diego and the Mexican Renaissance? Diego Rivera and other muralists were already using pre-Hispanic Mexican imagery in their work. Mexican folk art was already a trend among intellectuals. Frida operated within this context, not in a vacuum. Some critics argue that he is given disproportionate credit because his biography is dramatic, that if he had been a man without a history of suffering, his work would be considered good but not revolutionary. Others respond: precisely the point is that she took that visual language and applied it to the female body in ways that no one had done before. That is innovation. There is a little-known aspect of Frida's story: how many of her paintings were lost or destroyed. Some were stolen from exhibitions. Others were damaged by Frida herself in moments of rage. Diego reported that she destroyed several canvases during her darkest episodes of depression. Some paintings are in inaccessible private collections. Others disappeared during the political turmoil of mid-century Mexico. This means our understanding of his work is incomplete. We are seeing a selection curated by chance and accidental preservation. It is rarely discussed how Frida's posthumous fame affected her family. Her sister Cristina, with whom Diego had the affair, lived in Frida's shadow until her death. The descendants of the Kahlo family have fought legal battles over the commercial use of Frida's image. They have tried to protect her legacy, but they are also caught in the commercial machinery that turned their relative into a global brand. Viva la Vida, the watermelon painting dated 8 days before her death, is frequently presented as Frida's optimistic final testament. But there is evidence that the date is incorrect, that it was painted weeks or even months earlier, that someone added the inscription Viva la Vida later, perhaps Diego himself. If this is true, it changes the meaning. It's no longer a final declaration of love for life in the face of death. It's just another painting, later romanticized. So, after all, what is Frida Kahlo's true legacy? She's not the image marketed on mugs and t-shirts. She's not the saintly feminist without contradictions. She's not the perfect heroine who conquered pain with art. Her true legacy is deeper and more human. She demonstrated that art can come from dark places, that beauty doesn't have to be comfortable, that women can be serious artists without asking permission, that the body, with all its imperfections and traumas, can be a legitimate subject of art. She redefined beauty not by creating a new standard, but by destroying the idea that there must be a single standard. She created space for ugliness, pain, strangeness, difference. And perhaps, in 2025, that's more necessary than ever. In an age of Instagram filters and plastic surgery, where the pressure for physical perfection is more intense than ever, Frida says, "Look at me. I'm imperfect. I'm wounded. I'm real. And I'm beautiful precisely because of that." That is the message that survives, not the simplified version of his image, but the complicated truth of his life and work. Frida Kahlo didn't redefine beauty for everyone, but for those who don't fit conventional definitions, for those who carry invisible pain, for those who feel too strange or broken to be considered beautiful, Frida says, "You matter too. Your pain is valid too. Your body is art too." And 71 years after her death, that message still resonates. Because pain is universal. The imperfect body is universal. And the need to be seen, truly seen, with all our cracks and fractures, is profoundly human. Frida didn't conquer pain. No one conquers chronic pain. But she transformed it. She turned it into something others could see and recognize in themselves. And in that act of transformation, art changed forever.